The dusk air in downtown Portland wafted with the aroma of autumn leaves and the subtle pledge of drizzle. Robert Mitchell sat alone at a curbside table outside Café Éclat, watching the city slip into its customary evening cadence of commuters and early diners. At 62, he had learned to value these serene intervals between engagements when the burdens of leading Mitchell ventures seemed to melt into the background. The linguine pomodoro sat half-consumed on his plate. His appetite had faded lately, eroded by endless business suppers and the lingering ache that still caught him off guard. It had been 2 years since Margaret's passing, and though the sharp sting of grief had softened, solitary meals still felt empty. Robert glanced at his wristwatch, a vintage Omega that Margaret had given him for their 25th anniversary. The board meeting wasn't until the following morning, and his hotel room held little charm. He had grown used to savoring these small delights, finding peace in observing the energy that flowed around him on the lively street. A young woman approached the cafe's open-air seating, moving with the cautious steps of someone carrying precious cargo. She held an infant close, wrapped in what looked like a handcrafted blanket. Her chestnut hair was pulled into a simple braid, and her clothes, though neat, showed signs of hard times. Robert watched as she hesitated near the restaurant's entrance, her eyes scanning the outdoor patrons with a mix of hope and reluctance. Her posture hinted at quiet desperation, restrained by poise. When their gazes briefly crossed, he saw not just need, but insight and fortitude. The woman neared his table with measured steps, stopping at a polite distance. "Forgive me, sir," she said, her voice soft yet clear. "I don't mean to interrupt, but I saw you weren't finishing your meal. Could I have what's left?" The question hung in Tainas, a dusk air between them. Robert had been asked for money countless times over the years, but never in this manner. There was no force in her request, no guile, just candid need voiced simply. He looked at her more closely. She couldn't have been past 25, with eyes bearing the distinct weariness of sleepless nights with a young child. The baby in her arms stirred faintly, making soft sounds any parent would recognize. "Of course," Robert said, easing his chair back. "Would you like to take a seat?" The woman wavered. "I don't want to encroach on your evening." "You're not encroaching," Robert replied gently. "I was just done anyway. Please." She settled carefully into the chair opposite him, adjusting the infant with practiced ease. The child, perhaps 4 months old, had tiny fingers that sometimes slipped from the blanket to grasp at the air. "I'm Robert," he said, signaling the waiter. "Clara," she replied, "and this is Ava." The waiter approached, and Robert ordered another portion of linguine, plus bread and a cup of tea. "The food here is quite good," he told Clara. "You shouldn't have to make do with scraps." Clara's eyes welled with tears. She quickly blinked away. "You don't need to do this. I didn't intend to." "I understand," Robert said softly, "but I'd like to buy you dinner, if you'll allow it." As they waited for the food, Clara shared parts of her story. She had come to Portland 6 months ago, fleeing a harmful situation. She'd found work at a diner, but the hours were unstable, and childcare was costly. 2 weeks prior, the diner had closed suddenly, leaving her jobless. "I've been staying at the women's shelter," she explained, gently rocking Ava. "But there's a wait list for longer-term programs. I have a job interview tomorrow at a downtown hotel, a cleaning position. It's not much, but it's a start." Robert listened without interrupting, acknowledging the courage it took to share such personal details with a stranger. He thought of his own daughter, Emily, now 35, living in Seattle with her family. What if she had ever faced such trials? When Clara's meal arrived, she ate slowly, relishing each bite while keeping one hand free to comfort Ava. Robert reflected on the many business dinners he'd attended, the costly meals that had become routine, meaningless. "How old is Ava?" he asked. 4 months next week, Clara replied, her voice warming as she looked at her daughter. "She's been such a good baby through all this. Sometimes I feel she knows we're in this together." Robert smiled. "Babies are more perceptive than we think. My daughter was like that when she was little. She seemed to sense when Margaret and I needed her to be patient as we learned to be parents." "You have a daughter?" "Emily. She has 2 kids now, 8 and 10. Robert pulled out his phone, showing Clara a recent photo from his granddaughter's school play. Time moves so fast. One day you're worrying about teething, and the next you're watching them graduate college. They talked as the evening deepened. Clara shared her dreams of finishing her nursing degree someday, of giving Ava the stable life she deserved. Robert spoke of Margaret, of the foundation they'd started to help families in need. She always said everyone deserves a new beginning, Robert said, that circumstances don't define character. As the cafe began to wind down, Robert made a decision that felt both spontaneous and inevitable. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a Beaumont sinus card, writing something on the back. "Clara," he said, "call this number tomorrow morning. Ask for Linda Harper. She's the director of our family aid program." Clara looked at the card, then at Robert. "I don't understand." "The Mitchell Foundation provides emergency support for families in transition, temporary housing, childcare vouchers, job placement. It's what we do." Clara's hands trembled slightly as she held the card. "But why? You don't even know me." Robert paused, watching as Ava opened her eyes, gazing around with the unfocused wonder of infancy. "Because 35 years ago, my wife and I were young, struggling. We had dreams but no money, and Emily was just a baby. A stranger helped us when we needed it most, not just with money, but with opportunity and dignity." He paused, remembering that man. "Mr. Kowalski gave me my first real job. He saw something in me I couldn't see myself. He taught me that success isn't just about what you accomplish, but what you make possible for others." Clara wiped away tears that had started to fall freely. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll call Linda tomorrow. Say you'll let us help you get back on your feet." "I will," Clara whispered. "Thank you." As they prepared to part, Robert watched Clara gather her things with careful attention to Ava's comfort. There was something profound in seeing a young mother's devotion, how love could persist and even flourish in the hardest times. "Clara," he said as she stood to leave, "that job interview tomorrow, what time?" 10 o'clock at the Marriott downtown. Robert smiled. "The general manager there, Mark Davis, is an old friend. I'll call him tonight, not to guarantee anything," he added quickly, "but to make sure they see what I saw tonight. Someone with character and resolve." 6 months later, Robert received a handwritten letter at his office. Clara had landed the hotel job and, with the foundation's help, had moved into a small apartment near Ava's daycare. She was taking evening classes toward her nursing degree and included a photo of Ava, now sitting up, smiling at the camera. "Mr. Mitchell," the letter read, "I often recall that evening. You showed me that seeking help isn't shameful, and accepting kindness isn't weakness. But mostly, you showed me there are still people who see others as family, not strangers. I hope one day I can pass on what you gave me, not just the practical support, but the reminder that we're all connected, that we all matter." Robert folded the letter carefully and placed it in his desk drawer next to Margaret's photo. He thought of that evening outside the cafe, how a simple request for leftovers had reminded him of something essential about human connection and the privilege of helping. That night, he called Emily in Seattle. "I've been thinking about your mother's favorite saying," he told her, "about everyone deserving a new beginning." "What about it, Dad?" "I think she'd have added something. I think she'd have said that sometimes giving someone else a second chance gives you one too." As Robert looked out his office window at the city lights below, he reflected on how the most meaningful moments often arrived unannounced. A young mother's bravery in asking for help, an old man's recognition of his younger self in another's struggle, the quiet miracle of kindness connecting strangers across circumstance. Sometimes, he realized, what appears to be charity is truly grace, offered and received by both, reminding us we're more alike than different, and never truly alone, as long as we remain open to connection. The dusk air outside still carried the aroma of autumn and the promise of drizzle, but now it also held the memory of a conversation that had changed 2 lives, one act of kindness at a time.